I've decided it's about that time to give you another 2014 NFL mock draft. And this one here, you could just check out in the description box down below. It is one round and it is with trades. Now that free agency has taken shape and we're about almost 2 weeks into that, now you start to be able to piece together your draft boards just a little bit better in terms of what team needs are still left, what talent is going to match the team needs in the draft positions. Now, you'll notice in the description box, I've got a total of 10 trades going on in the first round, something similar maybe to a 2012, which was another pretty good, pretty deep draft class. Now, some of you might sit there and say, well, why would you have so many trades if it's such a talented draft class? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I get what you're saying, but that's not true. If anything, that would encourage more trades, and here's why. Teams that would sit there and say, oh, somebody like, let's say, a Greg Robinson, for example, just one guy. In a lot of drafts, he might go 1, 2, or 3, but in this type of draft, he might go 4, 5, and 6. That might entice somebody at pick 8, pick 9, pick 10 that wouldn't dream any other time of moving up that far to go get him. Now he's fallen into the range where you don't have to give up nearly as much to go get a guy that you're grading out as a top 3 talent, let's say. So there's a lot more incentive to move up for certain teams, for certain players, because players drop in part because they don't envision those guys getting to them or anywhere near them, and then they get a lot nearer to them than they thought. Now, on the flip side, teams that are looking to trade down, they have that same philosophy of wanting to trade down as maybe they always do every year, but in particular with the deep draft, they don't feel as much of an urgency to have to draft for need here because in some cases they maybe feel like they can roll the dice a little bit and maybe their best player available will be available a little bit later on, or they can go in another direction and it not really hurt them. So if anything, the formula is perfect here to see a lot of action on draft day on Thursday. And that's exactly what I envision happening. Like I said, a total of 10 moves up the draft board. In terms of the trades, I've got Atlanta trading up to 2 to get JADEVEON CLOWNEY. I've got Detroit trading up to number 5 to get Sammy Watkins. Even if they sign Golden Tate, I think that doesn't matter. The bottom line is you brought in an offensive-minded head coach in Jim Caldwell. Matthew Stafford needs more weapons. Adding Golden Tate to go along with Calvin Johnson is okay, but you could do more. And not only can Watkins impact the game positively on the outside and in the slot, but also as a returner as well. A more explosive version of a Golden Tate, if you will. I've got St. Louis moving up 5 spots to take a Mike Evans from 13 to 8. And the reason I do that is because if I'm looking at Les Snead's kind of track record of drafting guys early and in particular in the first round, he tends to like those guys that I think are like special athletes, or they have great size, or they have great athleticism, or great speed, or a great combination of those skills. And a guy like a Mike Evans will go teaming along with a Greg Robinson, who I have falling to them at 6. What a steal that would be. You're giving Sam Bradford more help, even though I don't think Sam Bradford is a franchise quarterback. The bottom line is St. Louis Rams, Les Snead, Jeff Fisher, apparently they do, at least for 2014. If that's the case, you must get him more help. You must get him some additional protection on the offensive line, which Robinson would obviously do that. And then you need to give him a big-time physical red zone target in a Mike Evans. And that's exactly what they would do here. I've got Pittsburgh trading up to 11 to get the top corner, arguably, in the draft, in DENNARD from Michigan State. That way they prevent Tennessee from taking them. I've got Arizona moving up from 20 to 14 because Chicago at this point, with Aaron Donald going 12, I think would desperately want to bail out of this pick. And Arizona might be a little tempted to move up to get an Anthony Barr because they might panic because they might think a Tennessee would take him at 15, with Tennessee converting to a 3-4 defense. One big move I have going on the draft board is the San Francisco 49ers moving up from number 30 to number 17 to get Odell Beckham Jr. from LSU. And the reason I have them doing this is they have a lot of picks. They have 2 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks. They have the ammo, they have the arsenal to be able to move up a little bit without hurting themselves too much and be able to go get a big-time playmaker, which is what an Odell Beckham would be. You've got 2 kind of similar receivers in Crabtree and Bolden. You need that guy with that explosiveness down the field, and especially out of the slot, that an Odell Beckham could provide, not to mention the fact his impact as a returner. That's something that the San Francisco 49ers could desperately use. So as a result, it would be worth the risk of them jumping up the board to make sure that they get their guy. I've got Cleveland trading up from 26 to 21 to Green Bay slot to take Calvin Pryor, the safety from Louisville. Now, some of you are going to sit there and say, Schleg Daddy, you're nuts. If anything, I'd have them taking Watkins at 4 and CARR at 26, or taking a quarterback at 4 like Manziel or Bridgewater, and then taking a wide receiver at 26. Understand this. You don't know what Cleveland's going to do. When in doubt, you can assume that they will get it wrong and they will be stupid. The ironic thing here is, though, is that taking Khalil Mack at number 4, in theory, is not a terrible move because he's a better defensive player than JADEVEON CLOWNEY. You can put me on record for saying that. He's the best defensive prospect in this draft, maybe not named Aaron Donald, or maybe even including Aaron Donald. So that's a great value there at number 4. And then Calvin Pryor at 21, you're in about the right spot, and you find a replacement and perhaps even an upgrade for a one-dimensional safety and in-box safety like TJ Ward, who just left and went to Denver. So you can sit there and say, well, why would they not go offensive? Well, last year they brought in an offensive-minded head coach and took Barkevius Mingo 6 overall. So they have no fucking clue what they're doing is my point. But even in this case, I actually wouldn't blast them this much if they got a Khalil Mack and they got a Calvin Pryor. Because let's face it, if Cleveland chose a quarterback in the first round, they might very well choose the wrong damn one. And then they probably wouldn't help them and surround them with pieces on offense. They just draft more defensive players anyways because they're stupid like that as an organization. I've got Washington trading up from the beginning portion of round 2 into round 1 to get a Marquise Lee. They need another weapon to go with RG3 and Pierre Garcon and Jordan Reed, and new acquisition who's nothing more really than a slot receiver and an Andre Roberts coming from the Arizona Cardinals. You need more help. You need more weapons for an RG3 for Jay Gruden in that Washington Redskins offense. And it's a beneficial move for the Redskins to move up a couple of picks and get into the first round because they get an extra year of control over Marquise Lee as opposed to if they ran the risk of taking him in the first portion of the second round. I've got Pittsburgh peeling back up again, which just seems something that would be kind of out of character for Pittsburgh, but you know, sometimes this stuff happens, and they have moved up in the past big time in order to get a guy. They did it back in 2003 with Troy Polamalu. They needed a corner. They got their corner in Dennard. Now they need a big-time physical wide receiver on the outside to complement Antonio Brown and give Big Ben that big physical red zone target. Now they go roll the dice, and they get Kelvin Benjamin, the wide receiver from Florida State. And then I've got Minnesota trading back up into the last slot of round 1. They've got their quarterback here because they traded back from 8 to 13, and I still had Bridgewater on the board, which is who they take there. Now they address a big-time need on the defensive side of the ball, and they get a linebacker, maybe the best linebacker in this draft, and Ryan Shazier, in terms of a traditional 4-3 linebacker I'm talking about. Keep that in mind, because Khalil Mack's a better prospect. But Shazier, even maybe over a C.J. Mosley, because some teams might knock Mosley for his injury history. They might look at his junior year compared to his senior year and say, what happened? They might be a little fearful because he's just a middle linebacker. They don't view him as having the same positional versatility of maybe a Shazier, who can sit there and play weak side and play in the middle as well. In terms of the quarterbacks, I'll go on record right now. I'd be absolutely stunned, and I think I've been mocking this for a little bit now, that Blake Bortles is going to go number 1 overall to the Houston Texans. If there is anybody that thinks that the Houston Texans should take JADEVEON CLOWNEY number 1 overall, rest assured you are stupid. They did this crap back in 2006 with Mario Williams. Ultimately, it didn't work. Yeah, they found their franchise defensive player, their defensive end. Unfortunately, that came in 2011 when they drafted J.J. Watt like 10 picks later than number 1 overall. This is stupid. And especially when you look at the fact all these people fantasizing about J.J. Watt and JADEVEON CLOWNEY on the same defense. Clowney's not the best fit for that scheme. He's not going to play a 5 technique end. That's not playing to his strengths. And while I think he could play 3-4 outside linebacker, if I'm going to take a 3-4 outside linebacker, then I'm going to take the guy that projects to be a better 3-4 outside linebacker at the NFL level in Khalil Mack. The bottom line is the Houston Texans need something that they've never really truly had, which is a young franchise quarterback for their organization to build around, for their fan base and their organization to believe in and get behind. I don't think Bortles is that guy, but I think Bill O'Brien will ultimately fall in love with this guy, and they'll end up taking him number 1. I've got Jacksonville taking Johnny Manziel number 3, just because they're the Jags. I could see him doing it. I've got Oakland trading back from 5 to 10 because they're going to target a quarterback. Even with trading for Matt Schaub, they would draft Derek Carr. You might say, why in the hell would they? Well, why in the hell wouldn't they? They're the Oakland Raiders, and that's what they do. And Minnesota potentially getting the biggest steal of the entire first round by getting a guy like Teddy Bridgewater to fall to them to number 13. Still being able to trade back, acquire additional picks that they could use as ammo later on as currency or to get players themselves, and then still be able to get your guys, still be able to get a potential franchise quarterback and get them basically in the middle of round 1 would be outstanding for the Minnesota Vikings. You can let me know in the comments section what you think of my mock draft. If you have any questions about this mock draft and my philosophies for doing some of these things and some of these picks, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. Probably be another week or 2 before you get another mock draft from me. We're getting closer and closer to the 2014 NFL Draft. Thank God.